And I feel that in the Indian sports community, most people are genuinely happy about the sportive success of their peers. And you celebrate that, liberally, even if it's not a huge success,
Right.
But you give that energy and you give that support, you give that love. And in many other cultures, including my own, it doesn't always happen that naturally. The fascinating thing, to me at least, in long distance racing, is that it will never go according to plan. There will always be some unexpected that happens to you, and therefore you have to be mentally truly prepared to deal with those challenges that pop up. And typically is that one body function after another will start to go for a toss.
Yeah.
And that's when the mental game starts. So what I like to say is that the long-distance Ironman racing gives you the unique opportunity to look straight into the eyes of the person who you really are. So when you go into a race, you feel strong like a King Kong, and then the further the race progresses, the smaller you become. And in the end, you're just a small midget that is crumbling for help. And that's when you have to take mental control and bring that negative dialogue that will happen to a positive one to actually bring you to the finishing line.
I am Baiki Venki and this is the Working Athlete Podcast. Here I talk to working athletes from all walks of life and experts from various sports to provide you with inspiration, training tips, time management and lifestyle advice. If this is something that interests you, please make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any future episodes. Today's guest, Pablo Erat, is a Swiss entrepreneur and a age group winner of many Ironman 70.3 races around the world. He has a special place for Goa in his heart as he has been a regular in the Goa triathlon scene from its infancy. He has seen it grow from grassroots level events about 10 years ago till now, where Goa is hosting an official Ironman event. In this episode, we talk about Pablo's endurance journey of racing and winning around the world, along with the development of triathlon in India and in Goa in particular. It was fascinating to hear his views on various topics related to triathlon, including the ingenious way he manages a serious injury that threatened to put an end to his racing career. I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope you do too. Now let us get started. Hi Pablo, welcome to the Working Athlete Podcast. It's a pleasure having you on the show.
It's my big pleasure, Venki.
It is right now we are sitting in Goa right after Ironman 70.3, Goa 70.3, where you did really well, I thought. And of course, you won your age category and finished third overall.
In the latest official results, it's positioned as third.
Okay.
As far as I go, it's sixth, but that's another topic.
Sixth overall, we'd say. And so let us, first of all, congrats for that.
Thank you.
Before we get into that, I want to, take you back a little bit and talk about, how was your childhood with sport in relation to sport, and then how did you get started and all that.
Okay.
Yeah.
How much time do we have? So, I'll try to make it sort of, a little bit compressed and a short version.
Yeah.
But it's maybe interesting to understand that, to understand also where we are today, right? So when I was a teenager, I was into track and field during the summer, and in the winter I did alpine skiing. And my big dream was to participate at the Olympics one day. And my specialty was 110 hurdles. So sprinting actually, and not endurance sport. Now that dream never materialized, And one of the reasons, in addition to me not being that talented, but one of the reasons was that I loved competing, but I did not love training as much, right? So maybe at the age of 16 or 17, I refocused very much on my studies and then on starting to build my own businesses. I've been an entrepreneur my entire life. And at the age of 35, maybe I had a moment of realization that I should start to reignite my passion for sports again, because I was overweight and I was living a very unhealthy lifestyle. So what I did was I registered for the marathon in New York, and I gave myself 10 months to prepare. And in the beginning, I could not even run 5 kilometers without taking a break. And then, I jogged 4 or 5 times a week and went to New York and had an absolutely fantastic day. Not in terms of, timing and all of that. I suffered a lot during the last 10K, but it was the first time since my teenage years that I felt completely connected to my body again. And I just felt that strong passion, and I understood that at that age, endurance sports would be my future. And when I crossed the finishing line in New York, I think in 3 hours and 33 minutes, something like that, after a really hard struggle, I formulated the vision and the goal to myself to do an Ironman within the next 12 months. Wow. And also to qualify for Hawaii, wow, which was a little bit crazy. Right. But fast forward 12 months later, I stood at the starting line in Florida for the full Ironman, and I actually managed to qualify for Hawaii in a time of 9:24, I think.
9:24 for a first full Ironman.
That's correct.
And this is like going from being sedentary at 35 to full tilt, almost a great time. Sub 10 is considered really good times, right? Within what, less than a couple of years?
This was within 12 months.
So
yeah, or if you include my preparation for marathon, which you should, right, it's less than 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think that I don't consider myself to be particularly talented in long distance endurance sports, but the magic really comes from consistency and putting your mind to it and developing a little bit the single-minded focus. I'm not as single-minded today anymore. There are many things that are much more important, but back then it was truly important. I wanted to achieve that goal of qualifying for Hawaii, so I did everything needed on the side, of course, of my work to make that happen.
Right. So take us a little bit into that road to your first Ironman, so that the listeners can get a feel of what kind of preparation went to it. Obviously, you might have done some smaller races as a preparation. How did that go?
It's good that you bring that up, because of course, as a part of that plan, you don't go to an Ironman race without having done a triathlon before. So right. I did a local race in Switzerland about 10 months, leading up to Florida, and this was still in the autumn. And I came out of the water in the 6th position and thought I was rocking, and reminding you that there were 78 participants in that race. And then I jumped on the bike and I thought I would rock it on the bike, and I did definitely not. I really sucked on the bike. So I ended the bike ride in position 73. So I dropped back from 6 to 73, and I could hardly get over one of the big hills there. And then I ran my way up to position 25. But that really impacted me, because I realized that you really have to work hard for it on one side. And also, I never thought that I would be so bad on the bike. I thought it's something natural that anybody knows how to do. And that was a key moment, because I said, you will not be able to achieve anything in an Ironman if you're not strong on the bike. It's just a fact. It's the longest, part of the race. Yeah. So I did something not very intelligent, but very effective. And that was that in order not to be humiliated like that again, I spent 2 hours at least every evening on the turbo trainer. And it was actually not a turbo trainer back then, this is like 17 years. We had a spinning bike, a used one that I had bought from a fitness center.
Right.
And so 2 hours every evening, and in the beginning I was just spinning lightly, and then I was putting more and more resistance to it. And after that one winter, maybe 6 months of just spending my time on the spinning bike, I was top 5% in bicycle riding in my age group. And my legs had developed all these muscles, and I was really having a lot of fun with it. I hardly knew how to ride a bike, right? Because I've always been on that stationary bike.
Right.
But then I understood bicycle riding requires really hard work. It requires you to be willing to go into that zone of pain, and just do the work, and I think almost anybody can do that, but it requires a lot of determination, and also doing some very particular training units, which I've figured out for myself to be very, very effective.
But almost everyone has the ability to suffer, but maybe not the willingness to suffer. Right? That's where that's what differentiates the the pros and the who get really good at it or who don't. I would think, right? But then, so you said you. From that first Ironman, that local race that you did, where you felt like humiliated because you could not get on the hill, there you leading up to your first Ironman, you worked on the turbo trainer to get better on the bike. And how did the race itself go for your first Ironman? Did you do much better on the bike and stuff?
Yeah. So it was interesting because I was part of a triathlon club, and there were a lot of athletes, obviously, that were much more senior than me.
Right.
And one of the guys who was maybe 5 years older than me, he also participated in Florida and had the ambition to qualify for Hawaii in one age group above me. So he was a little bit like my mentor and my coach, and I looked up to him. And I also trained together with him in preparing for Florida. So I will come back to that. But if you look at the race day, I wasn't particularly nervous. I have to say I was just extremely excited. And I told myself that probably if everything goes well, I can do sub 10 hours. And if I'm a little bit lucky, that might give me a slot. And then something on race morning happened. It's typical rookie Murphy's Law kind of situation. My wetsuit ripped just prior to start. So I had a big hole here on my side.
Wow.
So what did I do? I ran up to the exhibition, and I went to one of those wetsuit vendors and I said, please give me a wetsuit. I need it. It's cold water, and all of that in Florida in that time. And then he said, but I can't give it to you. You have to pay for it. Right. I said, but just trust me. It's my first Ironman, and I'm going to qualify for Hawaii. But I need a wetsuit from you. And then he was kind enough to give a wetsuit. So I put on a completely new wetsuit that I had never worn before, and I ran towards the shore. It was mass start back then. Just when the gun went off, I managed to get into the water. And the swim was okay, I think. I did maybe 1 hour and a few minutes, probably around 1 hour, not sub 1 hour for sure. So that was a good experience. And then I jumped on the bike, and I knew that I was a little bit stronger than my mentor on the bike, but he was much stronger in swimming back then.
Right.
So my target was to ride up to him and then basically trail him for the rest of the bike. So at kilometer 100, I caught him, and then I just stayed behind him. I went in front of him. We were riding together, but of course with the draft legal distance.
Correct.
And just one small anecdote, I had put on a new triathlon racing suit, the two-part thing that you used to wear back
Right.
then, this
Yeah.
kind of thing, which I was very proud of, brand new, but it turned out that it was much too tight.
Okay.
So it prohibited the blood to flow to my legs.
Wow.
So what I
It
had,
was restricting it.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, it was just pushing right here.
Right.
So what happened actually is I had to pull down my pants to be able to ride. So you could see my white behind, when I was riding the bicycle. So another a rookie mistake.
Right.
But going forward again, coming into to the second transition, after 5 hours, quite exactly 5 hours, and I knew I'm going to do this really well,
Right.
because I felt confident 3:30 I will run for sure
Right.
on a marathon. And then my coach, or my mentor rather, he told me, Pablo, the first 5 kilometers you have to run with me. And after that you can go as fast as you want.
Right.
Which is a really, really good call, because otherwise I would have just raced
Yeah.
out there. So I ran what felt really, really slowly together with him, and just waiting for that 5 kilometer to come. And then 5 kilometer came. I looked at him and said, okay, Pablo, now you go.
Right.
And then I went, and it was actually, felt like the easiest Ironman that I ever done.
Right.
Maybe also because I paced it in a way intelligently. And I thought, Ironman is actually not as difficult as people say. But I learned to know the hard stuff of the Ironmans later on, including also the Hawaii that then followed the next year.
Nice. So the time that you got there, you said 9 hours, 29 minutes?
25 or
25
24.
minutes, 24 minutes and change.
Yeah.
Got you a slot in Hawaii.
Yes.
And you qualified for Hawaii's World Championships of
Yeah.
Triathlon, right? In the very first race.
Correct.
So how did the journey go from there? This was which year?
This was in 2006, I believe.
2006.
And yeah, 2006.
Right. So how did it progress from there? Like in Hawaii, how did that go, and later?
Well, to be frank, I never had a good race in Hawaii. I've been there 5 times, right? And the main problem is the heat and the humidity, because physiologically I have to admit, and I've tried out everything, I'm not capable of performing under such conditions. And the problem is my sweat rate. Mainly, I sweat more than 2 liters per hour.
Wow.
So that makes it humanly impossible to perform, because as you know, you cannot absorb more than 1 liter, which means that you will lose 1 liter of fluid, body fluid, every hour.
Extra, yeah.
And that becomes very dangerous, actually. So, so this I also had to experience at my first race. But I have to admit also that my first race in Hawaii, I really screwed it up. I went in there overly confident. I thought I would do top 3 in my age group at my first attempt. And I went so hard on the bicycle that when I came to Hawaii, which is the turning point, mid the distance on the bike, I had lost only 5 minutes, I think, on the best pro, which was Chris McCormack back then, and I was so wasted up there that I had no idea how I would get back to the second transition. So when I came back to the second transition, I was like, you probably have to walk the entire marathon, and that's more or less what I did. So I was around 10 hours, I think, in Hawaii.
Right.
Which still was good, considering everything, but that was a very, very tough experience.
Right. Going from thinking that Ironman is easy after your first race to a humbling experience.
It was a really humbling experience, and I really understood what it is.
Right.
And I think it was a good beating that I got there, to get down from your high horse and then realize what it takes. Right. To really perform.
So you said you have been to Hawaii, five times in total,
Yes.
right? Till now. What was your best racing experience? Best Ironman distance race, including the Kona.
Yeah, I had a few. I have to admit, I never really managed to figure it out completely. Maybe it's impossible, because it will always throw curveballs at
Curveballs,
you.
yeah.
But I had a few quite solid races, I would say. I had a good race in Barcelona, for instance, in 2017, I think, where I clocked 8 hours and 50 minutes. That was a pretty solid race. And I also came second in the elite category in the Finnish championships in the long distance racing a few years earlier, where I did 8:55, just 3 weeks after winning Ironman Zurich. So those were a few races that went really well. But the fascinating thing, to me at least, in long distance racing, is that it will never go according to plan.
Right.
Right? There will always be some unexpected that happens to you, and therefore you have to be mentally truly prepared to deal with those challenges that pop up. And typically, at least in my case, what's inevitable is that one body function after another will start to
Go for a toss.
go for a toss.
Yeah.
And that's when the mental game starts. So what I like to say is, and that I believe there is some truth to it, at least that's the way I feel it, that the long distance Ironman racing gives you the unique opportunity to look straight into the eyes of the person who you really are. So it's a true moment of truth.
That's very powerful.
Yeah, so when you go into a race, you feel strong like a King Kong, and then the further the race progresses, the smaller you become, and in the end you're just a small midget that is crumbling for help. And that's when you have to take mental control and bring that negative dialogue that will happen to a positive one to actually bring you to the finishing line.
Right. So that mental dialogue with yourself, it is also something that you have to practice, I
Yes.
think, right?
Yes.
Because you can train yourself physically, however hard you want, but if you are, almost not as strong mentally, it will probably not get you to the finish line, as many times.
You're 100% right. And yesterday somebody asked me, if I have an advantage being an older athlete because I have been able to develop that mental strength. And my answer is that I don't think it works really like that. It's not age related. But what is true, as you alluded to, is that you have to develop that mental strength and you have to train it continuously. Because it's like a muscle somehow, if you don't train it, you will lose it.
Right.
And you also, your form from day to day might vary. Some day you have a good day and you are mentally strong. Another day you are not, at that 100% of it, but you can bring up that mental performance level by preparing some things. And one very easy trick that I'm doing is I'm writing mental cards which answer the question why. Mm-hmm. Because at one point in time, also yesterday, that happened. The question comes, why am I doing this?
Right.
And if you are in a bad shape and your glycogen levels are down in the cellar,
right,
you will have difficulties in answering that why. But you have prepared those mental cards, which are like in the virtual back pocket, so I can take out that card and I said, this is why. All questions answered, and then you go.
Right. There are a couple of things kind of strike me there. It is, although you as an older athlete, you might have the benefit of, experiencing those lows and highs many times, and you might be able to pull them out. It will also, a practice that you need to keep on, doing. Like you cannot, when it comes to physical form, you cannot bank on something that you have done last year. You still have to continue training so that you are able to, do well this year as well. So it is something similar when it comes to
Yeah.
mental performance as well.
Absolutely. And there are some tricks that I used to do it more consistently. Nowadays I've become a little bit old and complacent in a way. Maybe it's not always that negative, but nevertheless, discipline is very important. And what I used to do a lot, and I still try to do today, is to, if I have a training with a goal, and my body is performing towards that goal in that training, I'm really trying to complete that training as planned. Right, so this means in very practical, if I say I go and run a 21 kilometer run, and then I do a route, and then I come back to my home at 20 kilometers. It would be easy to say, okay, I have done 20 kilometers, great run, now I go home and have a milkshake. But I said, no, you said 21 kilometers, so you go the full 21 kilometers. Or if you do track training, you don't slow down before you actually cross the line on the track after 400 meters. So you always go the whole way through until you have deserved to stop. And that just builds that, sharpening that mental edge, because also then in the competition, you don't start to
fade away and stuff.
You just really pull it through.
Right.
With the best of your abilities on that day.
That is very important trick. I think, like you said, you won't get suddenly stronger on the race day.
No,
right?
it's not like magic just happens. And there is a saying that there is actually no thing as magic, right? Magic is a result of very consistent hard work.
Right.
So you make magic happen actually.
Through your hard work.
Through your hard work. Yeah.
Right. Another thing I wanted to kind of touch upon is, what is your why that helps you, pull it out and keep going through the tough times?
Yeah. So, well, I'll very practically I'll reveal my why card yesterday. That I had during the race, because I anticipated, given the heat and humidity, that it would become very, very hard, on the race day. So, and on the run. So my why card was actually all of my friends that were supporting me, especially my friends from Goa. It's a fantastic community here. So many people who came out to the race course to support me, of course also other athletes, but the energy that I got from them, the enthusiasm, was just heartwarming. So I told myself, whatever happens, you bring it to the finishing line, because you don't want to disappoint all of these people who show up. Even if you have to walk, then you walk, but you don't give up, just because things become really tough. So that was my main why card, and I only needed that card, to keep on going. And it became very, very difficult on the run already after 4 kilometers.
Right, we'll get to that experience. But since you brought up your, Goa family, Goa friends into this conversation, I want to talk about, that phase of your life as well. When was the first time you came to India, and you've been in Goa? You spent many years in Goa, right?
Yes, yes. I had never lived in Goa. Really, I came to India the first time in early 2009.
Okay.
In February, and already during that spring I had the privilege to the first time come to Goa. And as I was into triathlon back then, I then looked into Facebook to see, if there is anything endurance related here in Goa. And I figured out that there is quite a strong bicycle community. And most of the guys do like those ultra long rides. And then on Facebook, I found a few people who seemed to me to be sort of leaders of this community, and one was Terence. Who sort of was the legend, still is here in Goa. So I connected with him and asked, would it be possible for me to join you on one of the rides? And he was kind enough to to welcome me with open arms. And the first ride we did was a truly exciting one. He said, we will meet at the Kala Academy, and then we will ride to one of the beaches at the south, like 90 kilometers ride, I think. We will stay overnight there, sleep in a shack, and then we will ride back the next day.
Nice.
So that's how it all started. And that's how I learned to know all these wonderful people in Goa. And it's been really an amazing experience, because how often are you welcomed that quickly and that naturally anywhere? So yesterday for me was a little bit the celebration of all of that as well. And I'm deeply thankful that I have been adopted basically by the Goan sports community as one of their own.
Right. The sport has this nature of bringing people together like none other, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what race, what economic stature and all that.
Yeah.
When you are on a bike, you are together, and I think that it has a unique ability to bring people together that way. So since 2009, you have been coming and staying here for a few days and months at a time, or how is?
No, I typically, as I have my or our business in with the headquarter in Mumbai,
Right.
and I'm a little bit more like a country guy, and Mumbai is of course a big bustling city with a lot of noise, a lot of people. So I also have, enjoyed the privilege to come during the weekends to India, typically maybe for 3 days or so. Sometimes I've been working a couple of days from here to be able to enjoy the calm and the peace and also the bike rides with all of my friends. So it's been more like that. So weekends or extended weekends, but you can experience a lot during a weekend, when you do things like that together.
Right.
So I think it's been a true gift for me.
Nice, because I always was under the impression that you actually lived here for years, because I've noticed so much love and reverence when your name comes up in any, speaking to any of the triathletes, any of the cyclists here and almost around the country.
Yeah.
So I always was under the impression that you were living in Goa for extended periods of time.
Yeah, it's really amazing, and I do think it's like it's maybe a little bit like philosophical, but these things are like a boomerang, right? So with all of the love that I received from the leaders of this community from the outset, it makes it very, very natural to embrace and give the same kind of energy back, and it starts to spiral.
Right.
And if you have an open heart like that, and it's so easy to create truly energetic relationships, and I think that's partly what you see.
Right.
And the other thing that I really enjoy in the Indian culture, and I know that many people would not completely agree with me, but especially, what I can talk about it is the sports community, right? And I feel that in the Indian sports community, most people are genuinely happy about the sportive success of their peers. And you celebrate that, liberally, even if it's not a huge success,
Right.
But you give that energy and you give that support, you give that love. And in many other cultures, including my own, it doesn't always happen that naturally. There's a little bit like, okay, it's great that you won, but actually, I think I would have deserved that.
Right.
And you hardly have that here, which I think is very refreshing, and something I just love to see. I think that's a very good trait of the Indian culture.
Nice.
The way how we support each other.
Right. So you have always taken part in any triathlon events and races that have taken place in Goa, I think, right? And what was your first race here?
The first race was maybe in 2012 or so. It was the first edition of Goa Triathlon,
The
organized by
Enduro Sports.
Enduro
Is it?
Sports, Elias Patel and his team and his lovely wife Michelle, and that was very interesting and exotic because nobody knew anything about triathlon back then.
Right.
You know, so when I went there the first time, I was searching for looking for the transition zone. So I asked one of the helpers, where is the transition zone? And I said, sir, it's here. I looked around and said, okay. And where should I put my bike? And I said, you can put it anywhere. And then I said, okay. And then I looked at my bike and said, yep, but sir, you don't have a side stand, or how do you call it? You know?
Right, yeah.
And I said, yeah, this is sort of a bicycle that doesn't have that. And then they said, you can take that palm tree and just lean it over there. So that's how it started.
Right.
But you could already see in the second edition, especially the third one, how extremely steep that learning curve was.
Right.
So it started like having seen a movie on YouTube, what triathlon is, to organizing an event, to really mastering it and bringing it to a level that I would say after 3-4 years was at an international level. So fantastic job done by the team. And I think they did 5 editions of the Olympic distance race, and then they had 1 edition of a 70.3 distance race that they organized as well.
Right. You saw that growth.
Yes.
From the organization perspective, or also
from the participant
from
perspective.
the participant perspective.
Yeah.
So how did the participant side of things, in your view, changed in those 5 years, especially?
Well, on one side, you saw, of course, an evolution in terms of numbers of participants. So in the very beginning, it was a few hundreds, and then in the end, it was probably around 1,000. And then, of course, you could also see the very strong development of the level of the athletes. So I was fortunate enough. Fortunate is probably the right word, to win all of those races, but twice it was extremely close. And the most interesting element happened when the Indian military started to send
their participants,
their front runners to the race,
right.
and there was a dynamic the way I perceived it, which was very interesting, and you will probably understand this. And this was to me, my biggest hope was always that some young talented athletes would come and win the race, right? But as you probably know me, I would never hand out anything for free, right? You have to earn it. Right. So my ambition is to show up in my best possible shape, to make it as hard as possible, and then I will bow in front of you when you win. That's the way how I imagine it to happen.
Right.
And now we as you know, we have the Indian Army from Pune. I think they have this squad with athletes that have become dear friends nowadays. And in the very beginning, this might have been in 2015. I think the coaches of these athletes in the military had formulated as one of the goals to beat me, because they thought it was somehow not okay that a foreigner comes and wins this race.
Right.
And he called the race organizer, Elias, and said, I will send my best 5 athletes. I can guarantee you that position 1, 2, and 3 will all be won by my athletes. So fast forward, I wasn't informed by that, and I was there on the race morning at the beach, and then I saw some really fast swimmers in the water. And I said, okay, something is going on here. You typically don't see fast swimmers like that. And then one of the young guys made a mistake that he came up to me and said, are you Pablo? And I said, yes. And then he told me, we are here to beat you. And I say, okay. And then he said, do you want to come have a swim with us? I said, okay, let's swim together. And then I, went swimming, and then of course they tried to destroy me already in the practice so they were much faster than me. And that was a mistake because they underestimated my experience, and they gave me all the information, right, to create my tactics for the next day. So can I spend 2 more minutes explaining the story?
Go ahead.
It's a little bit long story.
Yeah. We have all the time.
Okay. So then, of course, I checked the participant list, and I Googled all their times and so on, and saw who is fast running and all of that. Running was the only thing I was concerned about. And then I had all of that information, and then on race morning, 3 of the guys just went out much faster than me. 2 were a little bit slower, so I could swim with them. And then they make a tactical error in the swim because the sun was shining in the ice, so they took slightly the wrong angle in the swim. So I was able to catch up, the 50 meters that I was behind. So we came up to the beach at the same time. And what did I do? I let the 5 guys in front of me run on the beach, and I looked at the leg speed, and then I knew which of the guys were the ones who were faster. And then I had formulated the tactics for myself that I would attack the first hill. There was a very steep hill going up, and leave them behind. And the problem was it was a draft legal race, but I told myself I have to have 3 to 4 minutes lead to be able to win this race. So I think just attack on the bike, get that at 3 minutes lead. And I said, attack on the hill, and they will not be able to match your power because these are young guys with,
shorter maybe.
Young legs.
Young legs, yeah.
So I attacked with 450 watts, the entire hill. And then I looked at the back, and they were all at my back wheel.
Wow.
And what I have forgotten is these guys are around 60 kilos heavy, and I'm 75, so you cannot drop them on the
hill. Yeah.
And then I just continued to push 350 watts, but as it is a draft legal race, they were all behind me.
Right.
Now up there you have speed bumps, right? And I knew the speed bumps exactly. So what I did was, and this a little bit rude, but it was my only chance, right? So I was riding towards the speed bumps with full speed, all of the guys exactly behind me, and just like 2 meters before the speed bump, I took to the left because there was this small strip, and all the guys went into the speed bumps.
Right.
And nothing happened to them, of course, but like that I had a 40 meters lead.
Right.
And then I pushed, and then they were not able to breach the gap, although they were working together.
Right.
So in the end, I had a lead of 4 minutes in T2, and I was able to protect that and win the race.
Awesome.
And when we crossed the finishing line, that was a true moment of celebration where we hugged each other, and I showed my genuine respect for what they have done.
Right.
And we became deep friends. The coach was not as happy for some reason, the older generation, but amongst us athletes, that was the beginning of a great friendship.
Awesome. Yeah, that was a great story, and fast forward to 2019, right?
Yes.
Your the first edition of Goa 70.3.
Yeah.
How these were the races where it was like they began to observe you, understand you, and wanted to see someone other than a foreigner take the place. And fast forward to 2019, a world-class brand, Ironman, has come to India.
Yeah.
And how was that experience in that race for you?
Yeah. So first of all, I truly think it's great that Deepak Raj and his team brought Ironman to India.
Yeah.
Because Ironman is known to really bring a standard, good quality event organization and race to a country, and that's very helpful, of course, because until then I would say that the only really well organized triathlon in India was the one that was organized here in Goa.
Right.
And now Ironman came to set a clear benchmark, and that's great for all the other event organizers to learn from, and also to create a motivation for many athletes who are somehow attached to the Ironman brand. So that's a part of creating that movement, right? To bring that level up. And the first race for myself was actually quite similar to the race yesterday. I had a solid lead after the bike and thought I would be able to pull it off, but struggled in the heat and the humidity as I did yesterday as well, and therefore was overtaken by 4 athletes, I think. And that was, in a way, it was a full circle, right? Because that was, also
What you
for
wanted.
me, yeah, what I wanted, and the winner was the guy who was second back then, at that event that I spoke about. So I was really happy about it.
Was it Biswajit?
Yes,
Oh,
yes,
nice. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So that is, like you said, it has to be earned, right?
yes,
And
yeah,
you are not going to, hand it over
yeah,
easily,
yeah,
which was evident in the way that you, understood their strengths and weaknesses and used that for, to gain advantage in a
exactly.
race. So let us talk about yesterday's race itself for the second edition of Goa Ironman 70.3. When you came in, what was your strategy to obviously you wanted to win. I would think, knowing you. So what was your strategy coming in, and how did that peter out?
Yeah. So yes, you are right. I mean, if I would say no, then I would not be completely honest.
Right.
I knew that I would have a small chance to win. I told myself probably 15% chance to win
Right.
if I really play it right, and maybe 50% chance to be top 3 overall. And of course, given my strength profile, I also knew that I would need between 5 to 8 minutes of a lead off the bike, followed by not a fast but a solid half marathon run to pull it off.
Right.
But what I also knew is that a certain level of acclimatization would be necessary for me to run after a hard bike. So I tried to do some heat running in the weekend before, but of course 1 week is a little bit of a short time to.
For acclimatization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I still felt confident, that strategy would work out. But you know how it is. I think Mike Tyson once said that everybody has a strategy until they get punched in the face. so that's a little bit what happened to me yesterday on the run. So the swim was very pleasant. Completely relaxed. I didn't really push, but it. That was I really enjoyed it. Just fantastic out there in the water. And then on the bike, I did my thing, and I pushed sort of the wattage that I usually do on a 70.3 a race, and at each turning point, a lot of turning points, right? I was just clocking, and I was seeing this is going well.
Right.
I will have a lead over 10 minutes at the T2, so it created quite a lot of confidence. And I tried not to go over the top, so I didn't feel like my legs were exploding or anything, but pretty much in a steady state. And then when I jumped off the bike, I realized, my body is really hot. And you don't always realize that on the bike because you have the wind and everything. But off the bike, I was like, my lower back is hurting and my legs feel really stiff, and I'm really, really hot. So I wonder how this is going to pin out. But I set out with the pace that I had planned for myself. I wanted to do it steady at 4:20 per kilometer, and I kept that maybe for the first 3 kilometers, and then all my wheels fell off. And that was probably the tipping point where the heat just went too high, my core temperature.
Correct.
And my heart rate just spiked. And after that, it was just survival mode, which basically means taking long breaks at the aid stations, trying to cool down, to be able to somehow run to the next aid station. And with absolutely, left with without any possibilities to accelerate or to push myself. So it was just like bring it home, step by step, and embrace the crowd.
Right.
And enjoy also, although it's painful, but you can enjoy it while it's painful because you feel all of the energy
Right.
from the audience. So that's what I did, and of course celebrating each and single athlete that overtook me. So I know them all, right? And I was really happy for them, and they gave me also a lot of compliments while they were overtaking me. So that was also a beautiful experience in that sense.
Right. It is with your kind of experience, with those many races under your belt, like you also told, right at the start, you never really, feel like you figured it out, right? It can go wrong at any moment.
Yeah.
You can be like the quote is very aptly, you have all the strategies in the world, everyone will have a strategy until you. So these events tend to have a knack of punching you in the face more often than not. But I on the bike I could see that you were really doing well. We were standing on the hill cheering for you and all. I thought you were the smoothest on the bike. We were seeing the Air Force guys and the services guys were also smooth, but you had like more than 8 minutes of lead going into the last lap, and I could see, okay, Pablo is doing it, and we were really excited when we ran to the run course, and by the time we got there, it was like the second lap of the run course, and on the hill, we could already see that, oh, Pablo is struggling. It was not a familiar sight for most of us.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, but still you had like 3 minutes lead on Nihal, who was fast approaching, and by the time you took the U-turn from the time, and we timed Nihal again from you, and that 3 minutes became 2.5 minutes. And you still had another lap after completing it, and that's when we kind of understood, okay, this is not probably Pablo's day today. But it was, like you said, the energy was so infectious. It was great to be there watching all of you guys putting your best. It was so inspiring. Russell, my teammate, and the Equipe Goa teammate. So he's 70 plus years old. He was, and he rides only rides, but he's like, man, this is so inspiring to see these people. How do they do it? After swim and the bike and then the run in this heat, and he was like, I think I might want to do this.
That's fantastic.
That's the kind of inspiration people find. In the efforts that you guys were putting out there.
Yeah, and I have to say also, sometimes nowadays I'm not participating, but I'm there in the role of a supporter of my wife, who is a far much more talented athlete compared to myself, and I enjoy that role as well. I think it's really exciting to watch a race like that when you know what it means, and you know the athletes out there on the course. And coming back to the point that I was suffering. I definitely was, but I think everybody was.
Yeah, everybody
It was in that heat and that humidity. For some, it's more natural and easier, but it's still not easy.
It is.
Also Nihal was also suffering, and he expected to run much faster, but so it's difficult for everyone.
Yeah. The conditions were brutal yesterday.
And there was no shade. He was running in the middle of with the exception of that turning point up there. It was pleasant. You could feel the difference. But the long stretch was just in the middle of the road, and you had the sun on your head. No way to escape.
Correct. At least on the bike, you would have the ventilation, the benefit of the moving wind. Not so much on the run because you are going at a much slower pace. Right?
And maybe there is one element that I would like to share also, because I think that's also important. In terms of suffering and pain, it's important that you formulate a genuine strategy for yourself how you deal with it, right? Because it's inevitable that it will come. And I used to, when I was younger, I used to compete with some fear in my heart, to say like, I hope that the fear is not, that the struggle is not coming, that the pain is not coming, that the suffering is not coming. So I was running on fear, to say, now I have done 10 kilometers out of 42, I hope it will not come before 21, so that it doesn't become that hard. And that's not a good energy to run on fear. So I actually, after reading the book of Chris McCormack, I think, is it In It to Win It or something like that? I'm Here to Win, that's the title of it. I learned from that you need to, what he said, embrace the pain. So this, of course, doesn't mean that the pain is somehow your best friend, but it's a part of the experience, it's a part of the race.
Right.
So the attitude that I take now when I race is, when the pain is coming and the suffering is coming and things are starting to fall apart, I don't get shocked and say, oh no, it's the beginning of the end. But I say, okay, this is the moment. And this is the moment of truth. This is the moment that I have prepared for.
Right.
This is all of my trainings and the psychological things have been prepared to deal exactly with this moment.
Right.
So then it becomes, so to say, a little bit exciting that it's there, and you say, so now it's really the moment where I have to give my best to deal with this challenge and this suffering and this pain in the best possible way.
Right.
And the better I do it right now, the better the result will be afterwards, and the more satisfied I will be with my performance as well.
Right.
And with that, it's small change in mind, but with that you deal much better with it, and then it becomes a constructive struggle. So to say.
Right. From expecting pain and being fearful of it, it is that almost knowing that it will come and being like aware of that and almost treating it as a friend, and
Yes.
welcoming it and saying,
Yeah.
I have prepared for
Yes.
your arrival.
Yes.
Let us see. Right?
Yes, let's go with it.
Let's go with it. Absolutely beautiful. So I've noticed that you had surgery something last year, was it?
Yes.
So what was that, and how did you come back from it?
Yeah, that's it's good that you asked that, because that was, sort of like a depressing situation for me. If you understand how important the sport is, that has given
Right.
most of the things that are valuable in my life. Also through the sports, I learned to know my wonderful wife, and so without that, no chance that she would have been interested in me. So anyhow, then all of a sudden not being able to do what you love to do, of course, is heartbreaking in a sense. So what happened was I had a small accident while playing with my baby girl Ella, who is now becoming 3 on the 16th of December, and I destroyed my meniscus. And then the doctors looked at it and they said, well, at your age, we will normally remove the meniscus, but given your sports ambitions and everything, we will try to stitch it together. But no guarantee it will work.
Right.
And then 10 months, so for 6 months I was not allowed to do any kind of training with the legs. And then I started to train again, and actually I started to compete quite early and performed really well, surprisingly. So maybe, that's when you have done all of that, the learning curve becomes quite steep, the progression curve. But then in December, my knee started to become really swollen.
Right.
With any exercise actually that I did with the legs. So I did another check, and then they told me, the knee is just too destroyed. They would recommend that I stop running
Wow.
and just do bicycle riding and swimming, and definitely not aim to
Triathlon.
to compete in triathlons anymore.
Right.
And then my response to the physician, who I respect immensely, was that I completely accept the diagnosis, but I don't accept the conclusion. Right? So I said, okay, obviously the structures are destroyed, but the body is also a very intelligent organism, so to say. So you will find ways to overcompensate for deficits in many cases.
Right.
But I thought okay, so the main problem seems to be running. So what I will do is I will only run on a treadmill, and I will only, in the beginning, only run slow, and I will only run uphill.
Okay.
So that's how I started to get back to running. And I realized
What was the logic behind that decision?
because then the impact on the knee is minimized.
Okay.
And also run with shoes that have a soft front part
Okay.
of it. And like that, trial and error, sorry, I figured out a way how I could train without the knee starting to swell up anymore. And that's an indication that you are on the safe side of training.
Right.
And then I gradually increased the speed and went from like 10 kilometers an hour to 15 kilometers hours with the intervals. And when and even today I basically only do the hard running outside when it's a competition. But that actually worked. I was clocking the same times of 10 kilometers on the street or in Olympic distance races I did 5 years ago.
Wow.
Only with training on the treadmill. Now I don't have any complications with the knee anymore.
Right.
And having said that, it wouldn't make sense for me to run on a hard surface outside on a regular basis, because then definitely the knee would start to swell again.
Right.
But I could solve that problem. And I had a great season now where I was in my age group able to win every single race. This year, after a diagnosis like that in December, where they said you are not able to compete anymore.
Amazing.
So I haven't proven the doctors wrong. I think I have just figured out my way to intelligently adapt my training to accommodate for the shortcomings or deficiencies that I have in my body.
Right. So even now for your run training, it is mostly indoors.
Yes.
And only for the races you kind of tend to do it out.
And I do also 80% of my bicycle training I do on the turbo trainer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that to save time or?
It's to save time, because I don't want to invest that much time in training. I train between 7 to 10 hours a week in the season now, to have more time for the family.
Right.
With the young girl that we're having, our daughter, and also to, of course, to have more time to work.
Right.
And also, I also had some other private projects like building a house for the family and so on, which consumed quite a lot of time.
Right.
And so I want to keep it efficient, and take the most out of every minute that I'm training. And for that, of course, riding on a stationary bike, running on a treadmill, where you have no dead time whatsoever, is a very efficient way to do it.
True. So the 7 to 10 hours you're talking about is combined with all three sports, or how is that?
Yes, it's combined.
Okay.
So I do about 4 hours during the working week, so Monday to Friday, and 6 hours on the weekend. So the only longer stuff, typically on the weekend I want to do one longer run on the treadmill again, 90 minutes plus.
Right.
And one slightly longer bike ride of maybe 3 hours.
Right.
And during the week, I typically do 1 hour of training late in the evening, when my wife and daughter are already at sleep. I have my time for some training units.
Super. So, with all that, the way you are managing with, having a young family, running your own company, and performing athletically at a very high level, how do you? What are some of the advices that you give working athletes who are listening to the podcast?
So I would say there are a few. I think the first one is really that passion is the strongest source of energy, because you will need a lot of energy
Right.
in order to continuously push your way forward. So develop that passion, and the advantage of that is it's also that the passion is radiating, so you create a community around yourself. So the energy is very important. Then another element which I think is important is that you set clear targets and goals for yourself, something that is personally very motivating for you. That also gives a lot of energy because you can look forward to it.
Right.
And then the very practical elements of somehow matching all of these things. I think in terms of the goal setting in general in life, it's important that you have goals for all of the areas which are important to you, and that you try to balance them as well as possible. And at the top of the pyramid for most people, I think, should be the family and the friends. I mean, that's in the end everything that is
Correct.
is really important. And then you have your work, and then you have your passion, which in this case would be triathlon or endurance sports.
Right.
And then you find a good balance between these. And the consequence, of course, is you will always have to do compromises. And typically the compromises that I do are on the cost of sports, because that's in a way my ego goal, right? I'm doing it for myself, and if the family requires more time, or if the business has a critical period that requires more time, that has higher priority than my sports. And it's important, and this is an advice, of course, don't get stressed about it. We are not pro athletes, we are doing it for fun.
Right.
So if you have 2 weeks when you cannot train, so be it, and then you start again and do the best out of it. It's not the end of life. Some people tend to take it, in a very stressful way. And then of course, in order to get as much out of your 24 hours per day, you have to be a little bit innovative in your thinking. Say, how can you use some dead time that you are having? Can you bicycle to the office, for instance, and do some intervals on the way to the office? Can you do between telephone conferences? Can you have some weights, for instance, to do a little bit of weight training or core training? And like that, you can quite easily find an hour every day where you can do something that takes you forward.
Right.
And then also very importantly is to realize that progress is just thousands and thousands of incremental steps towards improvement. So don't go just because you have time. Don't just go from 30% to 100%, because then the injury will be a very natural consequence, or logical consequence of that. So again, gradually build it up, and also as a family person, if you get the support of your wife and your children, truly show your appreciation of it, and give something back also, to celebrate that with them, and appreciate the fact that they are supporting you, because it's not that self for sure, in a sense that the people are really behind you.
Right.
So show that appreciation. I think that's also truly important.
Right. Oh, absolutely great points. Thank you for that, and thank you for taking the time and sharing your experience and insights with the Working Athlete podcast. Really appreciate it.
It's been a true pleasure. Thank you, Venki.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That was my conversation with Pablo. I hope you enjoyed that. If you are enjoying these podcasts and are finding them useful, please consider supporting the podcast by subscribing to the channel on YouTube as well as on your favorite podcasting app. It really helps. Thanks again for your continuous support. See you next week with another guest.